I'm Daniel Harper, a man who thought he had it all figured out. At 42, I'd built a life that most would envy. A thriving architectural firm in Portland, a restored Victorian home nestled in the hills, and a marriage to Claire, my college sweetheart, that spanned nearly 2 decades. Our daughter, Ellie, was 16, sharp as a tack, with her mother's hazel eyes and my stubborn streak. From the outside, we were the picture of stability. Sunday brunches at the local cafe, annual trips to the Oregon coast, and a rhythm to our days that felt as steady as the tides. But life has a way of hiding cracks beneath polished surfaces, and mine was about to split wide open. It started with small things, the kind you dismiss because they're too minor to matter. Claire's phone, always face down on the counter, buzzing at odd hours. A new perfume I didn't recognize, sharp and musky, clinging to her clothes when she came home late from work drinks. She was a graphic designer, freelancing for a string of boutique agencies, and her schedule had always been erratic. Lately, though, the late nights had multiplied, her excuses growing flimsier. Client dinner, she'd say, or last-minute revisions. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? We'd built a life together, weathered the sleepless nights of Ellie's infancy, the lean years when my firm was just a desk in our garage. Trust was the foundation, wasn't it? But doubt is a slow poison. It started seeping in during a quiet October evening, the kind where the air smells of damp leaves and wood smoke. Ellie was at a friend's house, studying for midterms, and I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, waiting for Claire to get home. She'd texted earlier, saying she'd be late. Another client meeting. I didn't think much of it until I glanced at her iPad, left open on the counter. The screen glowed with an email notification, the sender's name unfamiliar, Evan Caldwell. The subject line was blank, but the preview showed a single line. Missed you last night. Same place tomorrow. My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming. I stared at the screen, the chili simmering forgotten behind me. I didn't touch the iPad. Some part of me still clung to the idea that this was nothing, a misunderstanding. But the name, Evan Caldwell, lodged in my mind like a splinter. I knew the name vaguely. He was a photographer, someone Claire had worked with on a branding project for a local winery. She'd mentioned him in passing, always with a casual tone, but now that casualness felt like a mask. When Claire got home, her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly mussed, as if she'd been rushing. "Smells amazing," she said, dropping her bag by the door and kicking off her boots. She crossed the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and grabbed a glass of water, all while chatting about a difficult client who demanded 3 rounds of logo revisions. Her voice was bright, practiced, but I couldn't unsee that email. I didn't ask about it, not then. I told myself I was being paranoid, that confronting her without proof would only make me look like a fool. Instead, I watched her, searching for signs I'd missed. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I noticed how she'd angle her phone away when texting, how she'd laugh a little too loudly at messages she claimed were from her sister. I started checking her schedule, cross-referencing her late nights with emails or texts I glimpsed when she left her phone unguarded. I hated myself for it, this creeping mistrust, but the evidence was piling up. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked her laptop. In her browser history, buried among work-related searches, was a link to a boutique hotel downtown, the kind with dimly lit bars and rooms rented by the hour. My heart pounded as I clicked the link, half expecting to find nothing. Instead, I found a reservation confirmation for a date last month, under her name. 2 guests. No other details. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside her, listening to her soft breathing, wondering who she was dreaming of. The woman I'd loved for half my life felt like a stranger. I wanted to shake her awake, demand answers, but I needed certainty. I needed to see it for myself. The opportunity came a week later. Claire announced she was meeting a client at a gallery opening downtown, a networking event for local artists and designers. "It'll probably run late," she said, slipping on a black dress that hugged her curves in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Don't wait up." Her smile was warm, but it didn't reach her eyes. I nodded, playing the part of the supportive husband, but my mind was racing. After she left, I grabbed my keys and followed her. Portland's downtown was alive that night, the streets slick with rain, neon signs reflecting in puddles. I parked a block from the gallery, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a crowd spilling onto the sidewalk. I spotted Claire almost immediately, her laughter carrying over the murmur of the crowd. She was standing close to a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a tailored blazer. Evan Caldwell. I recognized him from his website, which I'd obsessively studied over the past week. They weren't touching, not overtly, but there was an ease between them, a familiarity that made my chest tighten. She leaned in as he spoke, her hand brushing his arm, her smile too bright, too intimate. I stayed in the shadows, watching from across the street. The gallery event ended, and the crowd thinned, but Claire and Evan lingered. Then, as if on cue, they slipped away, walking side by side down a side street. I followed, keeping my distance, my pulse hammering in my ears. They stopped at a bar 2 blocks away, a place I'd never been to, with velvet curtains and a discreet entrance. Through the window, I saw them settle into a corner booth, their heads bent close, her hand resting on his knee. I couldn't hear their words, but their body language screamed what I didn't want to admit. This wasn't a work meeting. This was something else entirely. I stood there, rain soaking through my jacket, torn between storming in and walking away. I chose the latter not because I was calm, but because I needed a plan. Rage simmered beneath my skin, but I wasn't going to let it consume me. Not yet. I drove home, the city lights blurring through the windshield, and sat in our empty house, the silence deafening. Claire didn't come home until 2 a.m., her footsteps soft as she crept into bed, thinking I was asleep. I lay still, my mind churning. I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. She'd made a fool of me, and worse, she'd done it with a smug confidence that I wouldn't notice. The next morning, I played my part. I made coffee, kissed her forehead, and asked about the gallery event. She spun a story about networking, mentioning Evan in passing as a colleague who helped with the setup. Her lies were seamless, polished, and I nodded along, my face a mask of calm. Inside, I was plotting. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to unravel as slowly and painfully as I was. But first, I needed to know everything. I hired a private investigator the next day. His name was Marcus, a former cop with a no-nonsense demeanor and a knack for discretion. I gave him Claire's schedule, Evan's name, and every detail I'd pieced together. I don't want speculation, I told him. I want proof. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. You'll have it, he said. Over the next 2 weeks, he tailed Claire, documenting her movements, her meetings with Evan, their late-night rendezvous at hotels and bars. The photos he sent me were clinical, time-stamped. Claire and Evan in a car, her head on his shoulder. Claire slipping into a hotel room, his hand on her lower back. Claire laughing at a cafe, her fingers laced with his. Each image was a knife to the gut, but I forced myself to study them, to let the truth sink in. Marcus also dug into Evan's life. He was 35, divorced, with a reputation as a charmer in Portland's art scene. He'd worked with Claire on multiple projects, their collaboration stretching back at least a year. There were text messages, too, intercepted through methods Marcus didn't explain and I didn't ask about. They were explicit, intimate, filled with a casual affection that made my skin crawl. Can't wait to see you tonight, Evan wrote in one. Wear that red dress. Claire's reply, only if you behave. The flirtation was effortless, practiced, as if this had been their routine for months. I didn't tell Ellie. She was busy with school, her life a whirlwind of soccer practices and college applications, and I couldn't bear to shatter her world. But I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, my days consumed by a quiet fury. Claire noticed my distance, asked if I was okay, but I brushed it off. Just work stress, I said, and she accepted it, probably relieved I wasn't asking questions. I wondered how long she'd been lying, how many nights I'd spent oblivious while she built this secret life. The betrayal wasn't just about her and Evan. It was the way she'd rewritten our marriage, turned me into a prop in her story. By mid-November, I had everything I needed: photos, texts, hotel receipts, even security footage from a parking garage showing them together. Marcus had done his job well. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. I didn't want a divorce, not yet. I didn't want to scream or beg or cry. I wanted Claire to feel what I felt: the slow, suffocating weight of betrayal. I wanted her to lose something she valued, not just me, but the life she thought she controlled. And I wanted Evan to pay, too, for stepping into my world and thinking he could walk away unscathed. I started planning not just revenge, but a dismantling. Claire loved her reputation, her place in Portland's creative scene, the admiration of her peers. Evan thrived on his charm, his status as the city's golden boy of photography. I'd take that from them, piece by piece, in a way they'd never see coming. I didn't know the details yet, but the seed was planted, and it was growing. Every smile Claire gave me, every lie she told, fed it. I wasn't the man she thought she knew anymore. I was something else, something colder, sharper, ready to strike. The weeks following Marcus's investigation were a study in restraint. Every morning, I woke up next to Claire, her presence a paradox. Familiar yet foreign, like a photograph you've stared at so long it starts to distort. I'd watch her sip her coffee, scroll through her phone, and chatter about her day, all while knowing she was weaving a web of lies. The urge to confront her was a constant pressure behind my eyes, but I held it back. Confrontation would be too easy, too quick. It would let her off with a tearful apology or a defiant exit, and I wasn't about to give her that luxury. No, I wanted her to feel the ground shift beneath her, to lose the things she valued most: her reputation, her confidence, her carefully curated place in the world. And Evan? He'd fall too, but in a way that would sting for years. I started by gathering more information, not just about their affair but about the lives they led outside our marriage. Marcus had already given me a detailed dossier on Evan Caldwell, his clients, his social circle, his financials. The man was a freelancer, talented but reckless, living off sporadic gigs and a small inheritance from his parents. His divorce had left him with a modest apartment and a reputation for being a bit too charming with his female clients. Claire wasn't his first indiscretion, Marcus told me. There were whispers of other affairs, though none as sustained as this one. Evan's weakness was his ego. He thrived on being admired, on being the guy everyone wanted at their gallery openings and wine tastings. That gave me an angle. Claire, on the other hand, was more complex. She'd always been ambitious, not in a ruthless way but with a quiet determination to carve out a name for herself in Portland's design scene. She'd built a network of contacts, gallery owners, creative directors, wealthy clients, who saw her as talented and reliable. Her social media was a curated showcase of her work. Sleek logos, vibrant branding campaigns, photos from events where she smiled alongside Portland's creative elite. That reputation was her armor, her pride, and I knew it was the key to unraveling her. My plan took shape over late nights in my home office, the glow of my laptop the only light in the house. Ellie was busy with her junior year, staying late for debate club or sleepovers, and Claire was often working, leaving me hours to scheme. I didn't want to destroy her outright. That felt too crude, too final. I wanted her to watch her world erode, to feel the slow drip of consequences without knowing where they came from. The same went for Evan. They'd betrayed me together, so their punishment would be a shared descent, subtle enough to seem like bad luck, sharp enough to cut deep. The first step was to infiltrate their professional worlds. Claire had mentioned an upcoming project, a major rebranding for a local craft brewery called Ironwood, one of the biggest clients she'd ever landed. Evan was involved too, handling the photography for the campaign. The brewery's owner, Tessingwin, was a friend of a friend, someone I'd met at a charity auction a few years back. I reached out to Tessa under the guise of pitching my firm for a potential taproom expansion. Over coffee, I steered the conversation to her rebranding project, feigning casual interest. "Claire's mentioned it," I said, keeping my tone light. "Sounds like a big deal for her and that photographer. Evan, right?" Tessa nodded, enthusiastic. "They're a great team. Claire's designs are spot on, and Evan's got an eye for detail. We're launching the new branding at a big event next month. Huge party, open bar, the works. She didn't suspect a thing, and why would she? I was the supportive husband, proud of his wife's success. By the end of the meeting, I'd planted the seed that my firm might collaborate on future projects, which gave me a legitimate reason to stay in the loop. Next, I dug into Ironwood's inner workings. Marcus helped me here, discreetly pulling records on the brewery's financials and contracts. I discovered that Tessa's business partner, a silent investor named Greg Heller, had a reputation for being prickly about loyalty and professionalism. He'd pulled funding from a previous venture when he caught wind of unprofessional behavior among the staff. If I could make him question Claire and Evan's conduct, it might jeopardize their contract. The trick was doing it without leaving fingerprints. I created an anonymous email account and started crafting a paper trail. Using details from Marcus's reports, I sent Greg a carefully worded message, posing as a concerned industry insider. "I've heard rumors about Claire Harper and Evan Caldwell," I wrote. "They're talented, but their personal involvement might be clouding their professionalism. I'd hate to see Ironwood's reputation caught in the crossfire." I included just enough specifics, dates of their hotel meetups, a mention of the bar they frequented, to make it credible without revealing my hand. I sent similar emails to a few other industry contacts, people who'd worked with Claire and Evan, sowing seeds of doubt about their reliability. To amplify the pressure, I targeted Evan's social standing. He was active on X, posting about his latest shoots, charming his followers with witty captions and behind-the-scenes glimpses. I created a few burner accounts and started leaving subtle, critical comments on his posts. Nothing overt, just enough to prick his ego. "Heard you missed a deadline on that winery shoot," one read. "Hope you're not slipping," said another. I knew he'd see them. His type couldn't resist checking engagement. Sure enough, his responses grew defensive, his posts less frequent. I wanted him rattled, questioning his own charm. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at home. Claire and I still had dinner together most nights, though the silences between us grew heavier. She'd ask about my day, and I'd give vague answers, my mind elsewhere. Ellie noticed the tension, once asking, "You guys okay? You're acting weird." I brushed it off with a laugh, hating how easily the lie came. I didn't want to drag her into this, not yet. She deserved to keep her world intact a little longer. The next phase was riskier but necessary. Claire and Evan were set to present their branding work at Ironwood's launch event, a high-profile affair at the brewery's downtown taproom. It was their chance to shine, to cement their reputations with Tessa's influential circle. I decided to sabotage it, not with something as crude as a public scene, but with a calculated disruption. I contacted a former colleague, Jenna, who ran a small PR firm and owed me a favor. I asked her to spread a rumor among the event's attendees, something vague but damaging, that Claire and Evan's work might have been plagiarized from a lesser-known designer. Jenna didn't ask questions. She trusted me and had her own network to work with. She planted the rumor through a few well-placed whispers, ensuring it would reach Tessa and Greg before the event. To add another layer, I tampered with their presentation. Claire had left her laptop open one night, and I accessed the files for the Ironwood campaign. I didn't delete anything, that would be too obvious. Instead, I made subtle changes, swapping out high-resolution images for lower-quality versions, altering font sizes to make text illegible in spots, tweaking color codes to clash with the brewery's aesthetic. It was the kind of sloppiness that wouldn't be noticed until the presentation was projected on a big screen, in front of a room full of industry insiders. Claire would be mortified, Evan would look incompetent, and their professional chemistry would take a hit. The night of the event, I stayed home, claiming a headache. Claire didn't question it. She was too focused on her big moment. I sat in my office, refreshing X for updates, knowing Jenna's rumor would be circulating. Around 9 p.m., Marcus texted me. Presentation was a mess. Glitches everywhere. People are talking. He'd slipped into the event as a guest, blending in with the crowd. He sent me a photo of Claire, her face pale as she fumbled with the laptop, Evan beside her, trying to salvage the moment. The caption read, "Not their night." I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. This was just the beginning. The rumors, the botched presentation, they were cracks in the foundation, not the collapse. I needed something bigger, something that would hit Claire where it hurt most. Her sense of control, her belief that she could juggle her lies without consequence. I started digging into her finances, something I'd avoided until now. We had separate accounts for personal expenses, but I had access to our joint savings. I noticed small withdrawals, hundreds here, 1,000 there, that didn't add up. Spa days, she'd said, or new equipment for her studio. But the dates matched her hotel stays with Evan. I contacted our bank, posing as a concerned husband checking for fraud. The manager confirmed the withdrawals, and after some prodding, revealed they'd been transferred to a secondary account in Claire's name. A secret account. I didn't confront her, but I had Marcus trace it. The account was linked to payments for hotel rooms, dinners, even a weekend trip to Seattle I hadn't known about. She was funding her affair with our money, siphoning it slowly enough to avoid suspicion. The betrayal cut deeper now, not just emotional but financial, a violation of the life we'd built together. I decided to escalate. I reached out to a lawyer friend, Rachel, who specialized in intellectual property. I asked her to draft a cease and desist letter, claiming Claire's ironwood designs bore striking similarities to a lesser-known designer's work. The letter was sent to Tessa and Greg, with a copy anonymously forwarded to a local design blog that loved industry gossip. The accusation didn't need to hold up in court, it just needed to spread, to taint Claire's name enough to make clients hesitate. Rachel assured me the letter was vague enough to avoid legal blowback but sharp enough to raise eyebrows. By early December, the cracks were showing. Claire came home from meetings looking drained, her usual confidence fraying. She mentioned issues with the Ironwood project, how Tessa was second-guessing her work, how rumors were circulating. Evan, too, was faltering. His ex-posts had stopped entirely, and Marcus reported he'd lost a gig with a local magazine. I played the supportive husband, offering sympathy, suggesting she take a break. "You're working too hard," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. She nodded, distracted, unaware that I was the architect of her unraveling. But I wasn't done. The final piece of my plan was forming, something that would hit both Claire and Evan where it hurt most, their public personas. I wanted them exposed, not just to me but to everyone they cared about impressing. And I wanted it to happen in a way that left no doubt about their betrayal, no room for them to spin a story. The Ironwood event had been a blow, but it was temporary. What I had in mind was permanent, a public reckoning that would strip them bare. The air in our home had turned brittle by mid-December, like glass ready to shatter under the lightest touch. Claire moved through our routines with a distracted air, her smiles forced, her eyes darting to her phone more often than not. She thought I didn't notice, but I saw everything. The way her fingers hesitated before replying to texts, the faint tremor in her voice when she mentioned work. The cracks I'd sown in her professional world were spreading, and she was starting to feel the weight. Evan, too, was faltering. Marcus's updates confirmed he'd lost another client, his once vibrant ex-presence reduced to silence. But I wasn't satisfied. The damage so far was professional, superficial. I wanted something deeper, something that would strip away their illusions of invincibility and leave them exposed, not just to me but to everyone they'd fooled. This was the final act, and I was ready to bring the curtain down. The idea came to me during a sleepless night, staring at the ceiling while Claire slept beside me, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. Portland's creative scene thrived on reputation, and both Claire and Evan had built theirs on a carefully curated image of talent and charm. I'd already dented that image with rumors and sabotage, but I wanted a spectacle, a moment that would burn their betrayal into the collective memory of their peers. The opportunity was perfect. The annual Portland Design Awards, a glitzy event held in a converted warehouse downtown, where the city's artists, designers, and influencers gathered to celebrate their own. Claire was nominated for a branding award, thanks to a project she'd completed before the Ironwood debacle. Evan was set to attend as a guest, his photography often featured in the event's promotional materials. It was their stage, their moment to shine. I'd make sure it was their downfall. The first step was to gather undeniable evidence, something public and irrefutable. Marcus had already provided a trove of photos, texts, and receipts, but I needed something that would hit harder, something that couldn't be dismissed as gossip. I asked Marcus to dig deeper into their digital footprints. He came through with a goldmine, a shared cloud folder where Claire and Evan stored photos from their meetups. Candid shots of them laughing in hotel rooms, walking arm in arm through Seattle, even a few intimate selfies that made my stomach churn. The folder was password protected, but Marcus's tech guy cracked it in a day. The images were time-stamped, geotagged, and unmistakably them. I saved every one, my hands shaking not with rage but with a cold, focused clarity. Next, I needed a delivery system. The design awards were heavily covered on social media, with a live X stream and a hashtag that trended locally every year. I created a new burner account, untraceable, and spent days crafting a video. Using software I'd learned for architectural presentations, I compiled the photos into a montage, overlaying text from their messages. Missed you last night. Wear that red dress. Can't wait to get you alone. I kept it short, 2 minutes, enough to devastate but not so long it felt gratuitous. The final frame was a screenshot of Claire's secret bank account transactions, highlighting the money she'd siphoned from our joint savings. I didn't narrate it. The images and words spoke for themselves. To ensure it couldn't be traced back to me, I routed the upload through a VPN and a series of proxy servers, a trick Marcus taught me. The awards were set for a Saturday night in late December, the warehouse decked out with string lights and modernist decor. Claire spent the day preparing, her nerves palpable as she tried on dresses and practiced her acceptance speech. "It's a big deal," she said, almost to herself, as she adjusted her earrings in the mirror. "Could open a lot of doors." I nodded, offering a tight smile, my heart a stone in my chest. "You'll kill it," I said, and she didn't catch the edge in my voice. I declined to go, citing a last-minute client meeting, and she didn't push. She left the house in a sleek navy gown, her hair swept up, looking every bit the confident professional. I watched her drive away, then opened my laptop and waited. Marcus was at the event, blending in as a +1 for a friend in the industry. He texted me updates. Claire mingling with the crowd, Evan at her side, both of them working the room like nothing was wrong. The awards ceremony started at 9 p.m., with presentations and speeches projected on a massive screen above the stage. I'd paid a contact at the venue, a tech guy who owed me a favor, to slip my video into the queue, disguised as a promotional reel. He didn't know what it contained, only that it was a surprise for the nominees. At 9:45, as the branding category was announced, Marcus texted, "It's up." I watched the X stream from home, my pulse steady but my hands clammy. The screen flickered, and instead of the expected montage of nominees' work, my video began to play. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Claire and Evan's faces appeared, their private moments laid bare. The texts flashed across the screen, their flirtations now a public confession. The audience went silent, then erupted in murmurs as the bank account screenshot appeared, tying Claire's betrayal to our shared finances. The stream's chat exploded with reactions. Shock, gossip, even laughter. The video cut off abruptly, replaced by a flustered host trying to regain control, but the damage was done. Marcus sent me a photo of Claire, frozen on stage, her face drained of color as the crowd stared. Evan was nowhere in sight. He'd bolted, Marcus later confirmed, slipping out a side door. Claire stumbled through a half-hearted speech, her voice cracking, before leaving the stage without accepting her award. The X hashtag for the event was flooded with posts. "What just happened? Is this real? Claire Harper and Evan Caldwell? Messy." By midnight, the video had been reposted across multiple accounts, despite attempts to scrub it. The anonymity of my burner account kept me safe, but the story spread like wildfire. Claire came home at 1 a.m., her makeup streaked, her gown crumpled. She didn't look at me as she dropped her purse and sank onto the couch. "You saw it," she said, her voice flat. It wasn't a question. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Everyone saw it," I said, and she flinched. She didn't ask how I knew or what I'd done. She didn't need to. The weight of her exposure was crushing her. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but of what she'd lost. Her reputation, her credibility, the admiration she'd chased for years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But the words were hollow, too late. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next morning, I moved out of our bedroom, taking my things to the guest room. Ellie was at a friend's house, spared the immediate fallout, but I knew I'd have to tell her soon. Claire tried to talk to me over the next few days, her apologies growing more desperate, but I kept my distance. I wasn't ready to forgive if I ever would be. The creative community was ruthless. By Monday, Claire's clients were pulling contracts, citing professional concerns. Evan's career took a similar hit. Marcus reported he'd been dropped by 2 galleries and was laying low, his charm no longer enough to save him. But I wasn't done. The video was the public blow, but I wanted a personal one, something to ensure Claire felt the depth of her betrayal. I contacted our lawyer and had divorce papers drawn up, not to file immediately but to have ready. I also froze our joint accounts, citing irregular activity to the bank, which left Claire scrambling to explain her secret withdrawals. When she confronted me, her voice sharp with panic, I looked her in the eye and said, "You made your choices. Now live with them." It was the first time I'd let my anger show, and it silenced her. For Evan, I had one final touch. I'd learned through Marcus that he was pitching a solo exhibition to a prestigious gallery in Seattle, a last-ditch effort to salvage his career. I sent an anonymous tip to the gallery owner, including a few choice photos and a note. "Do you really want this kind of drama representing your brand?" The exhibition was quietly canceled, and Evan's name disappeared from the gallery's upcoming roster. By January, Claire was a shadow of herself. She'd lost weight, her confidence gone, her social circle reduced to a few loyal friends who didn't know the full story. Ellie, when I finally told her a sanitized version, was devastated but clung to me, not her mother. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The revenge wasn't about destruction for its own sake. It was about justice, about making them face the consequences of their betrayal. Claire had chosen to rewrite our life, to treat me as a fool. Evan had waltzed in, thinking he could take what wasn't his. Now they were both paying, not with violence or theatrics, but with the slow, relentless loss of everything they'd valued. I didn't know what came next for me. The divorce papers sat in my desk, and signed but ready. Ellie and I were closer than ever, her trust in me a lifeline. The house felt empty, but I was rebuilding piece by piece. I'd exposed their lies, dismantled their world, and walked away with my dignity intact. They'd underestimated me, and that was their mistake. As I sat in my office, the city's lights glinting through the window, I felt something new. Not peace, not yet, but a quiet strength. I'd survived their betrayal, and I was ready to move forward, whatever that meant.